Hi, I'm Matt with State of Flux, here with Nate.
This is kind of interesting because we're both filming for our respective channels. If you're watching on my channel and want to see what I look like in HD, go over to State of Flux and see what I look like in HD. But if you're watching on his channel, hi, I'm Nate. We used to review movies a long time ago. I think it was our endeavors that really got us, or got you going and got me going, and we kind of parted ways and we did our own thing together, or separately rather, and now we're back together. And
yeah, I generally stuck with the same aesthetic of that you introduced me to, which is place camera, sit in front, talk at.
And since we do it with his channel on my channel, it only makes sense to, now that we're on State of Flux, for me to plug Huge Movie Fanatics here on YouTube.
Yep.
And with any luck, I don't know what, he can do whatever he wants, but Huge Movie Fanatics is where you can find me and our old frickin' ancient videos.
In the description box below, I'll give you a link to follow. Definitely follow Huge Movie Fanatics. He explores a lot of the horror franchise stuff, older movies, a lot of stuff from the 80s
not
and
so
stuff.
much now, but YouTube made it difficult to find older movies. Remember how you could go from newest and then you could do oldest?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know how they're going to find all of our old stuff, but oh well.
Yeah, it is kind of hard. If you go back a good 8 years, you can find me on the Huge Movie Fanatic stuff.
Channel.
Yeah. But anyway, we are here today. I wanted to do a video talking about my favorite filmmaker, Wes Craven. Wes Craven is my all-time favorite filmmaker. He's somebody that had a large impact over a lot of the general interests in my life, and kind of the filmmaker that introduced me to horror through different means. So we're just gonna use this time to talk and remember Wes.
Because since we last were together, Wes has purported to have passed on.
Yes. Wes passed away in August of 2015. And that was the celebrity death that hit me the hardest.
So you're uploading this on the death day or birthday? I forgot.
Birthday. August 2nd is Wes Craven's birthday.
So it's birth and death month.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk to you about him. You're a fan of old horror and whatnot.
I just watched recently, just by coincidence, Hills Have Eyes 1 and 2 recently.
There you go. And with Wes's passing, I decided to consume every form of Wes media I could. There's one TV show I can't find that he helmed. There's one TV show that he helmed that I just haven't watched yet. And 2 movies, and that's it. Otherwise, I made my way through all of Wes Craven's entire catalog. He's a meaningful filmmaker. Even when he made a bad movie, he swung for the fences. And
Hills Have Eyes 2.
Hills Have Eyes 2. And he's also willing to acknowledge the problems and flaws within his own movies, which a lot of filmmakers aren't. They sort of land with this extreme hubris of the ego comes into it. And Wes, even being the master of horror himself, never really had that ego, which I thought was interesting. But my question for you is, how were you introduced to Wes Craven?
The first film I probably saw of his is when I started to get into horror movies when I was 11, just going on 12, and I saw the first couple Nightmare on Elm Streets. They had them on TV, and I taped them back to back, and that was probably my first Wes Craven movie I saw. Of course, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and at the time it was still the 80s, so I mean everything was Freddy and Jason.
Yeah.
And Chucky recently entered the fold at that time, and I gotta tell you, yeah, I mean, that was probably the first Wes Craven movie I saw, and I love me some Wes Craven original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. What I like about Wes Craven, as opposed to some other filmmakers of his same era that were masters of horror themselves, like John Carpenter and Steve Miner and a couple of other filmmakers, is he was a filmmaker that was, like, character-centric. Even his Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy's not in much of Nightmare on Elm Street 1 or 7. It's always Nancy's story. That's also something that he carried through with his Scream movies. They were character-centered movies. He takes time to focus on the camera on where it should be, which makes the horror more palpable when it does happen, because he gets you to care for the people in front of the camera. whereas I think John Carpenter made a technically superior and astonishing Halloween, but
Technically superior to what?
like just the technical filmmaking of that movie, like technically superior to a lot of Wes Craven's 80s films.
Oh, you think so?
On some extent, yeah. I think the creative juices that Craven was operating with didn't have the budget to support it, whereas John Carpenter knew how to do a lot with a little.
What's interesting about that, and it's really weird that you take that stance, having your favorite director being Wes Craven, but
I don't really like John Carpenter very much.
And that's another thing. I would disagree. I mean, I don't really like John Carpenter's visual style very much. I think Wes Craven's is much more organic and flowing.
Visually, yes.
If you look at even Hills Have Eyes, which is one of his first. I mean, Last House on the Left is very documentary style. So in a way, Hills Have Eyes is almost, in a way, kind of his first real or normal, conventionally shot movie. And I think for its budget and its means, I mean, he was the editor, I think, if you read the credits. I mean, that movie, even today, plays really well.
I've talked about this in the past. I think Wes Craven knows how to film a scene. And, so even when he doesn't have the budget to capture what's in his mind, Wes Craven's New Nightmare comes to mind. He is able to put interesting stuff in front of you to look at, even if the budget doesn't support the concept behind it. Whereas I say John Carpenter made a technical masterpiece with Halloween in that it is just a movie that is ever tightening the screws.
Very slowly.
It's a slow burn movie, but it's tense the entire way. Now, as a genre, we have moved so far beyond the original Halloween that it's kind of a hard movie to watch. And
especially for young people.
Yeah, for younger people. But he made a technical masterpiece. Wes Craven didn't necessarily have the technical ownership of Nightmare on Elm Street, as I say, largely because of budget. If he had an unlimited budget, that movie would be absolutely perfect.
Well, it's really crazy hearing you say that, because there's so much more interesting things that happen in Nightmare on Elm Street visually than Halloween.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely,
going on the ceiling, going up the wall.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, all the visual effects that are done with Freddy, the extending arms, going through the bars. I mean, I think Nightmare is more interesting than Halloween visually.
And it's a better movie than Halloween, I would argue. Visually, yes. As I say, the technical filmmaking of what's accomplished on convincingly in front of the camera is where I think John Carpenter had it. But as I was originally saying was that
did I interrupt you?
No, you're fine. Was that Wes always had a character focus first, and he played with his genre always. At the time he made Nightmare on Elm Street, slashers were prevalent, ever prevalent, but there wasn't necessarily this fantasy element to it, which once Freddy came into play, you got Michael Myers getting the weird Celtic religion and stuff like that brought in, making him more of a mystical killer, and you got Jason the Zombie. The fantasy element came into those other franchises post-Freddy. I think Freddy is largely why the popularity of his character. And he always played with the convention. I think Swamp Thing is a fascinating movie in that it's an anti-slasher movie. It operates under the same procedures of a slasher film in that you have the hulking monster off camera, hidden only by the editor, that just comes on and then is able to take out a bad guy that would obviously have been able to see him. It's something that you get that's very formulaic within a slasher film, but you never see the good guy do that. And the fact that you had this weird movie directed by Wes Craven, one of the early comic book movies, that again is a good movie, that the budget isn't really there. He did a lot with a little, but if that movie's fault is anything, is it didn't have the budget to execute its conclusion. I
enjoy the cheesiness of it.
It's so good.
Because back then, I enjoy it for what it is. Is this
Yeah.
your first outdoor video?
This is my first outdoor video.
So there might be a little wind. We apologize.
Yeah, sorry about wind, sorry about excess noises here and there, but
I got
we're
mad.
committing to
I
it.
finally got mad outdoors. What the hell? It's summer.
Yes, you're gonna see an Irishman fry.
But that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't mean to
No, you're fine.
interrupt your train of thought. But yeah, Swamp Thing I've always enjoyed, and especially the longer version with the toplessness.
Yeah, that's the only version that exists now, I think, right? Like that's the
I know
Arrow
that
version.
I know that I think there's a new Blu-ray either just released or coming out that's got both versions. I want to say.
Okay.
The Scream Factory version I've got on Blu-ray is the other one that doesn't have the toplessness,
gotcha.
so that's no bummer. That's a bummer.
Gotcha. Last House on the Left is one that I also have like weird feelings about, but I think is an exceptional movie.
We've reviewed that
Yeah.
probably in 2011 on my
I think
channel,
so.
Huge Movie Fanatics. If you wanted to search on YouTube, Huge Movie Fanatics, Last House on the Left. What was it? 1970 what? 2?
72.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that should come up with the video. Just a little bit of info.
A plug.
There. A plug for my channel.
Yeah. And I urge you to watch it. My stance on it hasn't
Thank
really
you.
changed a ton. I think it's an exploitation film that has a lot more care and thought behind it than you'd expect, while also being a remake, an artful remake of a classic Swedish film called The Virgin Spring. And why it works is that Craven had something to say with Last House on the Left, which is, you would have heard me on Huge Movie Fanatics during my Scream 5 review. I talk about the soullessness of most remakes because they're not passion projects. There's a passion to Last House on the Left in the sense that it's not saying the same thing the first movie said. It's telling the same story through the lens of modern day and modern problems, and the problem, the ugliness that you were seeing happen unfold through the news, through stories of rape and murder that were becoming so prevalent in the late 60s, throughout the 70s and 80s. He really capitalized on that, but he framed the shots not on the victimization, but on the people who were committing the crimes, which is something that a lesser filmmaker would have gone to film the boobs that are like flying about.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
Craven was smart enough to focus the camera on the ugliness of the situation, and therefore made a movie that is weirdly timeless, in that there is this cruelty to the world that is always unspoken, that we were hearing a lot about, but you still, when confronted with true ugliness, can't believe how ugly the world can get. And I thought that his tackling of the Virgin Spring through this lens was really interesting, through the lens of the news of the 70s. So much so that you nailed it, he filmed it through like almost documentary tactics. The only thing that holds that movie back is the off-putting
I was gonna ask
music.
I was gonna ask how you felt. If you lightened up about the music, I guess not.
I do think that the ballad that is sung by David Hess, who is one of the killers of the film, is a beautiful song. In a Bubble, I would listen to that. I actually have it on my phone. I do listen to that song. It's a good song, and it made me so happy that it showed up in the Hateful Eight.
Okay.
Like that, I was just like, oh my god! Like I had a geek out moment with that. But the score of the dun da da da, like that, and
You can't. You still.
I can't do that. And I guess the juxtaposition of cruel world versus traditional media consumption is still apparent, but I digress.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Okay.
So we've talked about, I want to hit sort of the beats of a lot of the trajectory of his career. We talked about Last House on the Left that got him started. Then there was The Hills Have Eyes, I think is a very good movie that is one of its weird kind of genre starters. That watching it today, it feels like a very formulaic or formulistic movie. Yet watching it back in the day, it was a subversion of the norm. and
it
built the tropes.
Oh, yeah.
It's the movie that built the tropes. Much like Halloween is kind of hard to watch now, just because we've moved so far beyond it. Hills Have Eyes is the same way, but the master filmmaking at hand is quite strong. It's a visceral movie even today.
It's still hard for me to watch that center, that middle part there, you know, with it might be just, it's like, it's up there with the original Texas Chainsaw, where the visceralness might not be able to be, you know, matched, or, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Surpassed.
Last House, Hills Have Eyes is a very good movie, and it found us Michael Berryman, which is always fun. He's good, and had Dee Wallace. I like Dee Wallace a lot.
Yeah, Dee Wallace before she got more
before
famous. Before E.T., before Howling, before Critters.
That's right, she was in Critters and The Frighteners.
Before Critters Attack.
Howling.
I already said that.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Halloween, because she also is in Halloween. She's in the Rob Zombie Halloween.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That movie doesn't exist to me.
We'll talk about that at some other point. But
you lightened up on it?
I was always a fan of the first one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's why I haven't seen it for 8 years.
Yeah.
I don't know, just kidding.
So Hills Have Eyes is great. I talked about Swamp Thing. Where do you land? Did you ever see Deadly Friend?
Oh, yeah.
Or not Deadly Friend, Deadly Blessing.
No, I don't think so. I think I've got the old VHS, but I've never watched it.
If you can track down, I think Arrow, maybe it was Scream Factory, put out Deadly Blessing on Blu-ray. It's a movie that isn't great, that showcases a career that is about to blossom.
Oh,
The editing of that film the conclusion of that movie is shot like the entire ending of Scream. It has the ending energy that Scream had. And it's well developed there. But then there are set pieces literally lifted from Deadly Blessing and put into Nightmare on Elm Street.
Are there Home Alone style traps at the end, like in every frickin' Wes Craven?
He did kind of pioneer that for a while, didn't he? I wonder how he felt about Halloween. If he was like, that idea ain't so fucking good. I came up with it 3 other times. Yet those movies made bank. But yeah, it was kind of weird.
So Swamp Thing, was that his first movie without the trap someone sets up? Because last time,
I guess Deadly Blessing would have been, unless
that was before Swamp Thing?
He filmed them back to back. I think Deadly Blessing came out just briefly first. And then he also did a movie called Summer of Fear, which was a TV movie that I happen to like.
I don't think I've seen it yet.
He did a couple other TV movies we won't talk about. Nightmare on Elm Street is a masterpiece. You've talked about earlier in this video about how compelling some of his visuals were.
Oh, God.
But how about the character of Nancy? I think she should be talked about in the same breath as Laurie Strode and like Sidney Prescott and stuff like that. Yet she doesn't get the love that those two characters get.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, here on State of Flux, my favorite franchise is Friday the 13th, and let's face it, like the final girls from those movies really aren't necessarily, they might be cute or they might fill the role and stuff, but I can say this about my favorite franchise. The final girls in the Friday the 13th movies are more or less pretty faces that go from A to B to C until they need to do what's needed to be done at the end of the movie. And I'd say none of the final girls, well, maybe not none, but yeah, we'll just, without ripping too much on my favorite franchise, I'll simply say that having seen it a couple times in the last several years, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy is just one of the most compelling and really, really interesting final girls in a horror film, and you really, I just love how the movie is about her character and what she's going through, instead of like, if you compare it like to Friday the 13th, I mean, those characters, those final girls, as much as I love them, it's just like a surface thing. You know?
Like,
whereas Nancy, you're experiencing this with her.
Like Friday the 13th is a good example, because let's just talk about the first 3 final girls. Alice isn't really the main character. She doesn't even really become the main character until the end of the movie.
And Alien.
Yeah, exactly. And like, she's not a bad character. She's fine and she's serviceable. But they immediately kill her in the next movie, which is one of the things that I really don't like about that second one. I like the character of Ginny in the second movie.
She's more of a character.
She's more of a character, but they also degrade her repeatedly till she pisses her fucking pants. Like, which I think is just so mean-spirited. The third movie had the best of the final girls. She has a character and a character arc throughout the entire film.
True, yeah.
She is obviously the main character from the onset of the film, and they take time to weave her character in, but she's a one-and-done hero. Like, never to be mentioned again. Which that would be kind of neat if they did, like, the Legacy sequel, Friday the 13th style, and pick up one of these characters. Like, certainly Ginny or her would be obvious choices to revisit, or Tommy, I guess. It is Tommy, right?
Tommy Jarvis.
Tommy Jarvis.
Yeah, you mean, what's his name?
Yeah.
What's his name? I can't remember his name.
Corey Feldman.
Corey Feldman.
Yeah. But, regardless, Nancy is somebody that I thought was interesting, and he talked on the commentary about how he wrote that character after his daughter criticized Swamp Thing. His daughter said that the Cable character was kind of a badass character throughout the first half of the movie, and then once the bad guys are in pursuit, she trips and falls over and screams. And he's like, yeah, why is that? Why do we do that? Why did I do that? And so he wrote Nancy to be the antithesis of that, somebody that would confront the problem, so much so that the final conclusion of that movie is the way to confront the problem sometimes is to turn your back on it. And
take away its power.
Take away its power. And it's a very interesting and therapeutic response to trauma. And if I could be so bold as to say, I think when Wes Craven, he made 3 Freddy movies. He only directed 2 of them, but he contributed greatly to the 3rd movie. Freddy plays as an allegory in all 3 movies, and he's a different allegory each time. In the first one, Freddy is an allegory for rape. He is the man that is in the bed with you that takes all the power away from you. You are left without any control. You're in his control until you can take ownership of this trauma and learn to live with it and deal with it, until the past no longer is able to haunt you. As is, Freddy is literally a ghost of the past. Somebody from this traumatic event that happened years prior. That makes Freddy immediately more interesting than the soulless dead eyes of Michael Myers, of the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes, or the weird bumbling fool that lives in the woods with Jason. I apologize. I will say I have been revisiting the Friday the 13th movies. You can check those reviews out on my channel, and I was much kinder to Friday the 13th 1 and 3 than I ever was before.
Oh, appreciate that.
So yeah,
I like it's a personal nicety to me or something. That was funny. It's my franchise. I made it.
Pretty much.
I love it, and I made it.
They're incredibly watchable movies. The Friday the 13th franchise. But Freddy...
Wind. Hello, Wind.
I win. Freddy was interesting in that respect, but not to be undone, it was also Nancy's story. And Nancy is this weird character in the first movie that is very childlike and innocent until she comes into her own. And he visually represents that by putting the mother character who's coddling her at times throughout the movie, even though the child wants to break free and grow up, where she's putting her mom down to bed and giving and with a bottle. Like, that's the conclusion of that movie, is her growing into a more maternal person herself. She is learning to be an adult. She confronts Freddy, turns her back on it, and if that had been the end without the stupid scene where the glove comes through and pulls them
Probably
off,
a Bob Shea request.
It definitely was. That is a great movie. With one bad last 20 seconds.
And you can't stand the what? What Nancy? What?
That woman, or the dad. The dad overacts like crazy.
What?
Oh, B.
Is that a B?
Yeah.
If you watch our review of Nightmare on Elm Street, he was unable to give it 4 stars because of that dad going, what?
What? What is it?
What is it, Nancy? You want? No, he's asleep. Call him tomorrow.
Yeah. That dude, he overacts. But moving on to the third movie, Freddy's allegory it doesn't stay as the rapist that steals your power. Freddy is an allegory for suicidal depression. You have people who are in a trauma center that are there because they're under psychiatric evaluation for trying to commit suicide. And Nancy has grown into a nurturing person at the end of her previous journey, into the person who is going to teach them how to use their gifts and find purpose within themselves to survive this this tact that is going on with them. That makes both her and Freddy more interesting in that movie. The execution of Freddy became what would steal the franchise of the quipster that wasn't in Craven's original draft of the screenplay, but the allegory sticks. His sentiment of what he wanted to do with both Nancy and Freddy from his original concept is still at play in that movie.
Are you guys filming?
Yes, we are.
Oh.
We can cut this out.
Yeah, you're cool.
Okay.
You're fine. But anyway, Freddy was super interesting, as was Nancy within that story. Nancy passes at the end of that, which is unfortunate, but that was that also happened in Craven's conclusion of that story.
That was his idea?
That was his idea, and it happens in almost the exact same way, except she dies confronting Freddy instead of being tricked by Freddy, which is, I feel like, more in line with her character. She would go out fighting rather than be taken
you don't like
advantage of. No, I didn't like that.
Yeah, that was
but if you read his original script, which I do think the ultimate script that lands that with the movie that as it was made sans the quippiness is a better screenplay. They took his idea and improved upon it. But that one element I do like better in his incarnation of the story. But moving on, you'd think that would be the end of her character, right? But it's not. Wes Craven's New Nightmare rounds out the child, mature adult to maternal parent by having her come full circle into being the parent.
But it's not Nancy, though. It's Heather Langenkamp.
It's Heather Langenkamp until she becomes Nancy.
Oh my God, you got me.
Yeah. And it's brilliant that he is able to give this character a 3-movie character arc that is always got forward-moving momentum even after she's dead.
You just did an Hail Hitler right there. I'm gonna freeze frame it.
Boom. I did, didn't I? I apologize. I do not share those sentiments.
Okay.
But then Freddy is interesting in that he is an allegory for the need to tell these stories. Like, by the time these movies were made, he was getting hit a lot with, Craven was getting hit a lot with, like, why tell scary stories? Why do you make horror movies? Isn't this corrupting our youth? So he made a movie about that.
Which is
Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Literally, that's what that movie is about. Like, how it affects you to both make these movies, to watch these movies, and be a fan of these movies. And, well, all three have their downsides. It's not bad to be a horror filmmaker. In fact, he argues the opposite, that it's a necessity to tell these stories, because in telling these stories that expose the cruelty and ugliness of our world, what you're doing is you're putting a stopper in it. You're trapping that story, forever held on celluloid. And these are stories that go back eons. And you can follow the breadcrumbs to the origins of these stories, which he illustrates by having the film echo not Alice in Wonderland, the Hansel and Gretel.
Did you see Gretel and Hansel?
I did not see that.
Oh,
no.
that was awesome.
Did you like that?
Yes.
Interesting. My wife saw it. She was not a fan, so I might have to watch that. We'll have to talk. But you can track the need to tell these stories has always been within us as storytellers. And why is that? And maybe it's because we're trying to put a stopper in some evil and cruelty and make sense of the world around us.
Or make some money.
And even in doing, well, Wes Craven's New Nightmare did not make money.
Yeah, true.
But his movies put thought to the franchise. I would argue there's very watchable sequels that I've not talked about in the that Wes Craven had no bearing on within the Nightmare franchise, that may be even more popular, but they don't have nearly as much thought put into them.
Or soul.
They are cash grabs.
Right. And they might be technically, interesting and visually interesting, but that's all that's there, or majority of all that's there.
The fifth movie has some of the most interesting and complex uses of camera, and is considered by most to be the worst of the bunch.
We've reviewed all of them on my channel, so feel free to watch our Nightmare on Elm Street reviews from when it was 2012, I think, and that was that one drunk woman.
Oh, that's right. That happened.
Are you Wolverine?
Yeah.
Because he had the glove on.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
She was getting drunk in the early afternoon.
Yeah.
She was
good times.
In my classmate, same class, I think. I didn't know her, but.
That's wild. I didn't know that part.
Oh yeah, I never told you.
No. Yeah. That's amazing. But yeah. Anyway, so did you have anything you'd like to talk about the Freddy of it all? His Freddy movies?
I mean, for me, the first film is just the hands down best. I actually like the second one, probably for sentimental reasons, because it was the first two that I saw as an 11-year-old. For me, the second obviously has nothing to do with Wes Craven, but I'll briefly say why I like the second one is because for me it's like the completely different. It's a black sheep of the whole franchise where it does something kind of interesting in a different way, although it's not the Wes Craven rules. It kind of, for me, it's interesting what the second one did in doing something different. Almost like, after the success of Friday the 13th, Sean Cunningham would have rather have done kind of like what ended up happening with the TV show, just individual stories instead of all being in the woods at camp locations. So it's almost like if Nightmare on Elm Street was going to try that, like the second one was almost a different version of Freddy. So I appreciate too, but on the Wes Craven stuff, the first Nightmare on Elm Street is my absolute favorite of all of them, and I'm not that big a fan of 3, but I can see the greatness that you point out.
I also I think it's a 3-star movie. It's definitely good, but it's not as great as some people make it out to be.
I don't know if I would have mentioned this, whenever we did it 11 years ago, reviewed it, but I don't like the 3 just because of the depressing aspect of the poor kids being like just, the overlords, like the Nurse Ratched. It's just too, I guess it goes, hits too close to home. Not that I was ever in an institution.
No, but I get that.
But, I've experienced that same kind of stuff as a teenager and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't like it in that aspect. But anyway, I keep on going completely off the rails. So, but for me, in short, the original Nightmare is my all-time favorite.
I think Wes Craven New Nightmare is my favorite of the Wes Craven concept films.
See, I completely agree with like all the greatness that's in New Nightmare. It's just a bummer that for me I let the limitations of the budget ruin it, and it's just a bummer.
It's really apparent.
It's too bad they can't go back and like redo the ending with much more, I don't know, better
gusto.
Whatever.
Yeah. It works as it is because it's telling stories of old, and it kind of gives you a presentation of one.
I gotta tell you though, New Nightmare at the end when she's talking to John Saxon, and all of a sudden he's calling her, "Why are you calling me Nancy, John? Why are you calling me John?" I mean, that is just genius.
Yeah, it happens so subtly that and then the camera is just so tight on her, and then she says, "All right, Dad," and then when the camera pulls back,
and then he drives away in his police car.
Yeah,
and she's in front of the house.
It's so good. Exceptional filmmaking.
Oh,
he was genuinely the master of his craft.
The disappointment when that didn't do well must have been so annoying.
That was the second. So the first. So that I guess moves me on to Scream is my all-time favorite Wes Craven directed film.
Oh, okay.
And he helmed it, but he didn't have ownership of the idea of it. So that's why I don't consider it his best movie. His best movie, I think, is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. The only thing that holds that one back is its budget.
Yeah.
Or execution of budget. That said, Scream 2 onwards, 2, 3, and 4, he did have a lot more ownership of, and even though he didn't write the screenplay entirely, he did guide it in interesting ways, and he puts his stamp on it more than he did with the first Scream movie. You get that in the acknowledgement of be careful with why you're watching this movie in the beginning of Scream 2, where you have a bunch of people having so much fun watching a slasher film, only to be confronted with the reality of true violence in the world.
In the theater at that
in the theater at the time, before like theater killing was a thing. But
was it because of Scream 2?
No, the movie firmly lands on that. That is Wes Craven at his most pure. Maybe he didn't write those words, but he lands the sentiment of the idea so well. I think the opening of the second movie, a lot of people ding it as just being like telegraphed, you know who's going to die because you watched Drew Barrymore die in the first one. But they're missing the point of the scene, which is the sentiment of like, be careful what you're watching and what the influence this might have. Are you watching it? It's an internalization of thought. It requires thought, and that's something that he often does. We've skipped over several of his movies, some of which are good.
I love Fool in People Under the Stairs.
Yes, People Under the Stairs is so good. That's a great movie that doesn't get the praise that it should. I think people are coming to it now, and Jordan Peele is doing a remake of it, I think next year.
Oh Jesus!
And
I mean, that could be interesting.
Absolutely.
From him. That's another filmmaker we could talk about who entered the fold since I last saw you.
Exactly.
Oh shit! We'll have to make a note of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope. Can I swear on your channel?
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely. I've been swearing.
You what?
I've been swearing.
Oh hell yeah! I hope I see this guy again sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I'm hoping to.
By the time people see this on your channel, it'll be.
We might already have another video up.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You're gonna be like, why are they talking and reminiscing in the beginning? It's because this is filmed like 3 months ago. Anyway. People Under the Stairs is a great movie. It has such high energy, and it's such a Wes Craven feel to it, while also being kind of different from a lot of his other movies in a good way. I really like that one. Do you have any thoughts on that movie specifically, other than it's good?
I just can't. You know, I've seen it so many times that I got it pretty well memorized. I just can't get over how awesome the character of Fool is and how amazing the kid is.
He's such a good actor in that. And it gives me a charge every time I see him. He'll pop up in random things from time to time, even like now.
And whoever plays who's the male bad guy? What's his actor name? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Super
either.
memory fails.
Yeah.
I stumped it.
You did.
But anyway, the guy from Silver Bullet, the male bad guy in People Under the Stairs, he's amazing.
He is.
Both the bad guy, both the baddies are fun.
Yeah, they're both good. I like the kid in the wall too.
Well, there's that too. Isn't he that one guy's kid?
He might be. I have no idea.
I think he's that one guy's kid.
I have a nursing love for the film Shocker.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with it, although I have the DVD and I've seen it a couple times.
Watch that one back to back with A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh,
I feel like it's a spin-off of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
I can see
It
that.
operates under the same rules of A Nightmare on Elm Street, where you can pull people out of one tangential reality into our current one and things like that. It feels like a sister film to Nightmare on Elm Street. People kind of attack that movie, and I kind of get it, but I kind of don't. I like it. I think it's good. It has a lot of great concepts throughout. None more so than you have like a male final girl for a change, which is unusual.
Final guy.
Yeah, and then the girl that's killed in the beginning has a lasting presence throughout the entire rest of the movie, so much so that she is in part what takes down the killer and stuff like that. It's kind of neat and played with, and not. I honestly haven't really thought of. I can't think of another movie where that has really happened either, where the first true victim or whatever becomes like one of the most important elements of the story in taking down the bad guy. and how the death of others it shows up throughout the movie. It's kind of neat.
I gotta rewatch that. I was never a big fan of, what the hell was that one that came out before it or around the same time? I know they
Serpent and the
I was
Rainbow?
never a big fan.
I'm a big fan of that one. That one's very good. You should give that one a
Rewatch both
rewatch.
of them?
Yeah, they're both very good. You seem to like Deadly Friend. You sounded like you.
Oh no! I was just excited because I reviewed it a couple of years ago. I don't really like it because
it's not good.
Well, right, it's not what he meant it to be or whatever.
No, yeah. In fact I did watch your review on that one.
Yeah, they put this beautiful chesty girl in the baggy clothes. What the hell?
What I liked about that one, I like that actress, Christy Swanson. She's good. Like, I have the book it's based on. The book is just a retinkering of Frankenstein. But in the book, they're kids. They're like 12 years old.
Oh.
And so they didn't adjust the dialogue of the characters.
So they're talking like...
But they cast like 26-year-olds playing 17-year-olds that are supposed to be 12-year-olds. And it's just like, what the fuck is happening? And then the studio just got all in on it. And then it gets like weirdly violent. But I will say the nightmare scenes in that movie are really good. They are pretty spooky.
I can remember something. Yeah.
There
What better man to do those nightmare scenes?
Yeah, he got them pretty good. Red Eye.
That one I haven't seen for ages, but I remember being very impressed with that when it came out.
A super good thriller. I really like that one. Rachel McAdams is. That was the movie that introduced me to Rachel McAdams.
And I'd seen
like Mean Girls.
A lot of people, I think, as well. Me as well.
Yeah,
but
she's super good in that movie. She had a breakout year in 2005, partly because of Red Eye. But Red Eye kind of gets lost in the shuffle, which is a shame. But moving it back to Scream. Being I happen to like My Soul to Take. It has a lot of problems, but I like the idea of it. Did you have anything to say?
I don't think I've seen it.
That was his last true movie that he wrote and directed. But then he ended his filmic journey with Scream 4, which is a movie you're not as praiseful of. But it's a neat final film in that it's an examination of all of the work that led him to that point, right? It's an examination of the Scream franchise, of the horror franchise, of where these movies come from. It's a movie that name drops Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's a reflection, and his final statement of it. The original script of Scream 4 ends with Jill killing Sidney, but she's not dead. The police arrive to the house, find Jill. Dewey finds Jill and is like, oh my god, she's alive, but only just. The two kids are framed, and then Jill is being loaded into the ambulance. Somebody says, Sidney's alive, we've got a pulse, and that's the end of the script.
That would have been...
And so then Jill's like, you're left with like, did she get away with it? Did Sidney die? Does she live? Does she tell the story? Does she remember what fucking happened? What happens? Like, that's how that script ends, which is a great ending. But at the same time, for Wes to be able to essentially write and shape the end of the movie as is his true ultimate statement with the career that he came to that point. Everything in the hospital at the end was crafted by Craven and Aaron Krueger to some extent. I think he wrote the scenes, or got credit for writing some of the scenes. But it was shaped by Craven, and Craven's final stance was don't fuck with the originals, which I think is a great scene. The final confrontation in the hospital, as cheesy as it is also kind of his final statement for a career that took him up there to there. It's okay to have reverence for these movies. It's okay, but don't bastardize them. Don't fuck with them.
Which they have done.
Which they have done.
Continue to do with impunity.
Yeah.
Implicity. What's the word? Punity? I think that's the word.
Yeah. So anyway, Craven is obviously somebody that means a lot to me. It's sad that he is no longer here. He also wrote a book called The Fountain Society and a comic book called Coming of Rage, which both are good, and I urge you to read if you can find. Coming of Rage is hard as shit to find. But if and I might do a review of these someday on the channel. But yeah, do you have any final thoughts on Craven's passing?
Well, definitely. Well, not so much on the passing. I mean, I guess it happens to all of us, but more so on the legacy he left behind. You know, this guy who was once 11, 12 years old and beyond, discovering his early works as a teenager, like Last House and Hills Have Eyes, and Nightmare on Elm Street, and going to see it at a second-run theater with my dad, People Under the Stairs, and enjoying Scream and the Scream films, and just the legacy that he left behind was definitely appreciated by me and just countless others, and you included. Back last time I saw you, like, when did Craven? How long was Craven like your favorite filmmaker? Was that?
He was always one
up
that
there.
He was always up there, but it was with his passing that it
hit you.
It hit me hard, and then I was thinking about it and stuff, and even I will watch movies of his that I don't like Hills Have Eyes too, like Invasion or Invitation to Hell or Chiller, or these random horror movies that aren't particularly good, and I can still gain some kind of base level enjoyment from them because he put thought into his movies, and when I recognized that, it really kind of hit me that he was my favorite filmmaker. And my exploration with Craven, my discovery of him, was I saw Scream. I saw Scream because I was a big fan of Friends, and I loved Courtney Cox, so I saw Scream, and that was a movie that I watched 3 times in 2 days. I was obsessed with the first movie after I saw it. And so the second movie I saw, I lived at the time in an apartment building, and my apartment building had a video store wall within it that you could take. The only other movie that they had there by Wes Craven was Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So that was the second movie I saw. And I was like, this dude is good. And my dad doesn't like horror movies, but he watched both of those with me, and he loved Scream, and he liked Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So when Scream 2 came out, he and I went to the theater and we saw it. And like we were fans, and then from then I rented A Nightmare on Elm Street, and A Nightmare on Elm Street was the first movie that actually scared me where I couldn't sleep, kind of thing. I freaked out.
You would have been how old when you saw that?
I was 97, so 11, thereabouts.
Like the same age I was when I saw it.
Yeah, and so it was genuinely a scary movie, and over time I would find out movie, this is back before internet was as prominent as it was, so I couldn't just track down all of his movies, but I'd be like, he made Swamp Thing? I like comic books, let's check out Swamp Thing, and I'd watch it and be like, well, it ain't Superman, but it is fun. And with age and whatnot, I can and then pursuing an interest in film and filmmaking and stuff like that, you can see the craftsmanship both in storyteller and in filmmaker behind all of his movies, and that's something that I've admired. And I'm a big fan of going and listening to Siskel and Ebert videos. That's something that I like to do when I'm at work counting money or something like that. I'll throw up Siskel and Ebert reviews. And even though they are so ardently against slasher films and horror films, they both have predominantly, especially Ebert, very kind things to say about Wes Craven, the filmmaker, even if they didn't like his movie, which is fascinating. Because you watch the reviews for the Halloween sequels or Friday the 13th, and they are unhinged in how much hatred and vitriol they have at those movies. But then they talk about, in the same breath, Shocker, and Ebert's like, I didn't care for this movie, but I have to admire the craft. And then he'll talk about that, and then Siskel being like, you know what, it worked for me. It got me thinking enough that I'm going to give this one a recommendation. And they'll do that, and it's so weird that they'll do that. Their summation of Swamp Thing is also fascinating. They gave that such enthusiastic thumbs up for the style of movie that it is, and I agree with them. Like they're just good. But it's neat that he kind of was the one filmmaker that got reverence in that time period when filmmakers were really getting attacked for making violent films.
Everyone else was getting just trashed on.
Yeah, I mean, John Carpenter, after he made Halloween and had his involvement with Halloween 2 and 3, didn't really make a slasher movie pretty much ever really after that.
No.
He pivoted to like Starman and like maybe even if he was in horror, like They Live and The Thing aren't really slashers. And whatnot. So like he smartly moved away from it. Wes stayed involved.
Yeah.
Sam Raimi also kind of wisely kind of moved away from that. But yeah, for somebody who stayed a horror filmmaker, by choice or not, the critics always seem to have a tip of the hat to him, even if they didn't like it. There was respect there, which was kind of neat. But yeah. So I'm a big fan. I wanted to take this day to remember my favorite filmmaker. I hope you liked this long-winded conversation, and if you like long-winded conversations, maybe we'll have more.
Wheel as in you and the camera, or me and you?
Both.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yes.
yeah, obviously he'll go on to do his
Yes,
videos.
this is
on
not
this
my
channel.
final video.
Yeah. Obviously he'll go on, we'll both go on to do our stuff on our own, but hopefully come together again in the coming weeks to
Yes.
do this again.
Yes. So thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.
And it was nice meeting you all.
Yes. Have a good one.